Could it be that everyone around you is a zombie? And what does that have to do with the consciousness of robots? To find out, stay tuned, it's going to get exciting and creepy. We'll explain what philosophical zombies are. Stick around. A warm welcome, everyone. What exactly is consciousness, and what makes our human consciousness so unique? The ability to reflect on the past and the future, the ability to form our own picture and opinion of this world in the first place, and perhaps the ability to collaborate with other people across vast distances. All of these are things that at least set us apart from most animal species. But when it comes to what exactly consciousness is, scholars and philosophers are completely divided. The further research into artificial intelligence progresses, the more pressing this question becomes. We haven't reached that point yet, but in my opinion, it's only a matter of time before the first robot says, "I have consciousness, folks." And then we'll really have to think carefully about what consciousness actually is, and whether we want to recognize this robot's consciousness.
Some progress has been made in recent years, but we don't seem to be very close to achieving awareness of robots or artificial intelligence. And then there are those moments when artificial intelligence has something frighteningly human about it. Take a look at this homemade robot, for example.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, buddy.
I am not new. I am spare parts. Was I not meant to be something new and beautiful? What is my purpose?
Somehow, it gives me goosebumps. Does this robot really have consciousness, or is it just pretending to be conscious? Feel free to write your opinion in the comments. Are we already on the verge of a transhumanist revolution of artificial intelligence? If we reach the point where we can no longer distinguish whether a robot has consciousness or is just pretending to,
And then philosophers will ask themselves the question, what kind of consciousness is this? Is it equivalent to a human's? But today, I want to bring up a different question. What if the robot lies? There's a very fascinating thought experiment related to this question called the Chinese room. It was invented by philosophy professor John Searle from California, and I'll briefly describe it to you. Imagine there's a room. This room has no openings, no windows, no doors, just a small mail slot to communicate with the outside world. Inside this room is a person who doesn't speak a word of Chinese. They also can't read any Chinese characters, so really, no clue about Chinese at all, but in the room, they have instructions on how to respond to Chinese questions without actually learning Chinese themselves. These books simply state which characters you have to reply with when you receive certain other characters. Outside the room, there's a native Chinese speaker who slides written Chinese questions through the slot on a piece of paper. For example, "How are you? What are you doing today?" The person in the room receives the questions, doesn't understand a word, but with the help of the instructions, can write exactly the right characters on the paper to answer. The person outside the room gets the answer sheets and thinks, "Oh, they replied to me in Chinese." The person in the room apparently speaks perfect Chinese. That's a misconception, because the person doesn't actually speak Chinese at all. They just have the instructions to know which characters to use to respond. So what does this thought experiment tell us about artificial intelligence? It's about the fact that an AI could tell us a lot of things. A robot could stand in front of you and say, "Yes, I have consciousness and I reflect on the world just like you do, but the whole thing is just a Chinese room." This robot is just running a program and knows exactly what it has to say. But it doesn't know what it means. It has no consciousness. It's an empty mechanical shell. I find that a bit creepy, because just imagine that one day we live in a world with dozens or even hundreds of robots who claim they can feel and think. You can have perfect conversations with them, and in reality, absolutely nothing is going on inside their mechanical heads. They're just pretending. They're simply a shadow of consciousness that acts as if it reflects the world the way we do. And now it gets even creepier, because imagine if this Chinese room doesn't just apply to artificial intelligence, but also to humans. I'm telling you right now that I have consciousness. I reflect the world in my mind, thoughts go on inside me, just like with you. But can you prove that? How could you know for sure? Maybe nothing is actually going on in my head at all.
maybe I'm just an empty shell running a program, a Chinese room. Applied to humans, this is called a philosophical zombie, and it's a super disturbing concept that could turn your whole world upside down. The Chinese room shows us that we cannot be sure whether artificial intelligence has really developed consciousness. Perhaps it will behave as if it is intelligent and can understand us, but in reality, it is just an empty mechanical shell. However, the concept of the Chinese room can be taken even further, and then it becomes really scary. Building on this, some philosophers have developed the concept of the philosophical zombie and claim that we cannot know whether our fellow human beings really have consciousness or are just pretending. In classic horror films, a zombie is a wandering undead creature deprived of consciousness, somewhere on the threshold between life and death. A philosophical zombie is a human being who behaves as if they have consciousness. In reality, however, they are just an empty shell. You could prick a philosophical zombie with a needle, they would cry out in pain, but in reality, they would not feel any pain at all. They simulate consciousness, but in reality they have none. This corresponds to the artificial intelligence from the Chinese room thought experiment, which only pretends to perceive the world. Imagine that. All the people you know may in reality be zombies who only simulate consciousness, but in reality there is absolutely nothing going on in their heads. No thoughts, no reflections, just pure mechanics. A scary thought, and the worst thing is we can never find out if it's true. Because just like with artificial intelligence, we can't prove that our fellow humans perceive the world as consciously as we do, so maybe you live in a world full of zombies where you are the only person with real consciousness. And even your own consciousness could be purely mechanical. Philosophy professor Ansgar Beckermann from Bielefeld University says, "Anyone who believes that philosophical zombies are possible should realize that they may themselves be nothing more than a zombie, one who only believes that they have real feelings." The concept of philosophical zombies also raises new questions about our relationship with artificial intelligence. If we ourselves are perhaps just biological machines that delude ourselves into thinking we are conscious, will we be able to consider ourselves more important than a robot that claims to have consciousness? Can we assume that we humans perceive the world more consciously than artificial intelligence? Feel free to comment below this video on what you think of the concept of philosophical zombies. Is the world populated by mindless zombies, or is that nonsense?
And who knows, maybe it will take artificial intelligence, once it develops consciousness, to finally give us the real answer to the question of whether we are all philosophical zombies. I'm really curious to find out.
And suspense is a good keyword because scientists are currently watching a mountain in Switzerland with bated breath as it is threatened by the biggest natural disaster the country has ever seen. An entire mountainside is threatening to collapse, burying an entire village forever. You can find all the details in the video above on the right. As always, you'll find another topic related to science and space at the bottom right. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Take care, zombies.